Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get into the actual architecture of our own minds. We're taking a deep dive into this two-track system of thinking that really explains why we're so brilliant most of the time, but also sometimes predictably biased.
And that distinction is really the whole game.
Yeah.
But before we jump in, I think it's crucial to set the stage here. A lot of what we'll talk about today is about the biases of intuition, where our gut feelings lead us astray.
Right, we're focusing on the errors.
Exactly. And it's so important to remember that focusing on error doesn't mean we're broken. Most of our judgments are perfectly fine most of the time. The problem is we are often supremely confident, even when we are dead wrong. And those mistakes are always easier for someone else to spot.
Okay, so let's define the two key players in our heads. We've got system one. You can think of it as the automatic pilot. It's fast, effortless, always running in the background.
It's that immediate jolt of fear when you hear a loud noise. That's system one.
And then there's system two. This is the conscious you, the one you think of as I.
Right. It's the deliberate reasoner. It's slow, it's effortful, it does the heavy lifting like complex math problems or, trying to remember a long list of things. System two is calculation, where system one is pure reflex.
So system one is cheap and efficient, but system two, it costs you something. And to really get our heads around that, we have to talk about the physical price we pay.
Yeah, they actually measured this, what it physically costs you.
Yeah.
They use these tasks designed to push your brain to its absolute limit, something called the add 3 exercise.
And what is that exactly?
You have to take a string of numbers and transform each one in your head while keeping a steady rhythm. You're holding the original number, the rule, and the result in your memory all at once. It's maximum mental work.
And the physical toll is just shocking. We're talking real measurable changes. When subjects were going full tilt on that add 3 task, their heart rate jumped by about 7 beats per minute.
And their pupils.
Their pupils dilated by about 50%.
Just from thinking. You are literally burning physical resources to solve a problem. It proved that attention is a finite currency, and that has huge consequences.
Because system two is just too slow and, frankly, too inefficient to be on guard all the time. We just don't have the bandwidth.
Right. So what happens when all that bandwidth is used up?
Well, there was this amazing experiment. They had people doing a hard math problem, and right at the peak of their effort, they flashed a letter, the letter K, right in front of their eyes.
They were staring straight at it.
Staring right at it, but they missed it nearly half the time. They became, for all intents and purposes, blind. Their attention currency was completely spent on the math.
Which means we can't be vigilant all the time. So to cope, system one has evolved these clever shortcuts, heuristics.
Okay, so instead of tackling a hard question, system one just swaps it for an easier one.
Precisely. And the first classic shortcut is the availability heuristic. Basically, we judge how frequent something is by how easily an example comes to mind.
Oh, I do this all the time with risk. If there's a plane crash in the news, suddenly flying feels way more dangerous, even though statistically nothing has changed. That memory is just so available.
That's the perfect example. Or, say, you're trying to guess the divorce rate among university professors.
Yeah.
System one doesn't run a statistical analysis. It just searches for divorced professors you happen to know.
Yeah.
The easier they are to recall, the higher you'll guess the rate is.
Ease of retrieval replaces actual calculation.
Exactly.
Okay, this brings up a really interesting one. The letter K. Is it more likely to appear as the first letter of an English word or the third?
And the intuitive answer, the one that just pops into your head, is almost always the first letter.
But that's wrong, isn't it?
It is. Letters like K, L, N, R, and V are actually much more frequent as the third letter. But it's just so much easier to think of words that start with K. Your brain mistakes the ease of the search for a fact about the world.
So the experience of searching your own memory becomes the data.
Yes. That feeling of flow or strain is the information for system one. That's the bias.
This made me rethink my impression that adultery is more common among politicians than, say, doctors or lawyers. My gut reaction was, of course it is. But then you realize the scandals of politicians are just reported on way, way more, so they have a much higher availability in my memory. It has nothing to do with the actual frequency.
That is the availability bias in the wild. It shows how media shapes our entire perception of the world. Now let's broaden this out to the substitution heuristic.
Okay, so this is where we replace a genuinely hard question with a much easier one.
The classic example is investing. The hard question is, should I invest in Ford stock? That's complicated. So system one just swaps it for, do I like Ford cars?
And the emotional answer to the easy question drives the decision on the complex one.
Which brings us to the real danger here. The lazy system 2. System 1 serves up a quick, appealing answer, and System 2 just didn't bother to check the work.
We can prove this with a little puzzle, can't we?
We can't. Okay, for everyone listening, try to answer this. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
And that first answer that just leaps out is 10 cents. It feels so right.
It's appealing, it's intuitive, and it is completely wrong.
Right, because if the ball was 10 cents, the bat would be $1.10 for a total of $1.210.
Exactly. The correct answer is 5 cents. The bat is $1.05, the ball is 5 cents, the total is $1.10. But to get there, System 2 has to engage and do that tiny bit of algebra. And most people just don't.
They don't invest the effort.
Not unless the stakes are high. It shows that System 2 only really kicks in when System 1 gets stumped.
These biases are so automatic, they can create cognitive illusions we literally can't unsee.
Oh, absolutely. Take the famous Mueller-Lyer illusion. You know, the one with the 2 lines and the fins on the end?
Yeah, one line clearly looks longer than the other.
So you can take a ruler and measure them, and your System 2 acquires a new belief. You know, for a fact, they are the same length.
But you still see them as different.
You still see one as longer. You cannot decide to see them as equal. Your System 1 is autonomous. It does its thing regardless of what your rational mind knows to be true. All you can do is remember the rule.
It's an incredible demonstration of its power. And this autonomy goes beyond just visual tricks, right? It affects our actual behavior through what are called priming effects.
The evidence for this is just astonishing. In Arizona, back in 2000, they looked at voting on school funding propositions.
Oh, okay.
They found that support for the funding was significantly higher when the polling station was physically located inside a school.
No way!
Yes. The mere presence of chalkboards, lockers, that whole environment, it primed people to be more supportive of education. And that effect was stronger than the difference between parents and non-parents, which is usually a massive factor.
That's amazing. Our rational brain is supposed to be weighing tax policy, but we're really being nudged by the building we're standing in.
And it gets even more direct. There was a study in a university kitchen, an honesty box for coffee and tea. For 10 weeks, they alternated a poster above the price list. Some weeks it was a picture of flowers. Other weeks it was a picture of eyes that seemed to look right at you.
And what happened?
During the eyes weeks, contributions nearly tripled. A purely symbolic reminder of being watched completely changed people's behavior, and none of them were consciously aware of it.
So System 1 is fast, it's lazy, it's easily primed, and it's also incredibly overconfident. Let's talk about why. It comes down to this core feature you call WYSIAD.
Right. What you see is all there is. It's System 1's motto. And what it means is your brain judges success by the coherence of the story it can build from the available information.
Regardless of the quality or the quantity of that information.
It doesn't matter. If the information isn't right there, for all practical purposes, it doesn't exist. Your mind isn't looking for what's missing. It's just trying to build the best, most coherent story it can with the pieces it has.
And this fuels the representativeness heuristic, judging probability based on how well something fits a stereotype.
Which brings us to the famous Linda problem.
Okay, so Linda is 31, single, outspoken, very bright. She majored in philosophy, and as a student, she was deeply concerned with social justice. So, which is more probable? A, Linda is a bank teller, or B, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement?
And logically, A has to be more probable. The category of bank tellers obviously includes all feminist bank tellers.
But almost everyone chooses B.
Between 85 and 90% of people. Because the description is just so much more representative of a feminist bank teller, it creates a better, more coherent story, and we mistake that coherence for probability.
And this problem with probability gets even worse when we deal with statistics, right?
Yes.
Specifically, base rate neglect.
Yes, the classic cab problem. So imagine a city with 85% green cabs and only 15% blue cabs. There's a hit and run, and the witness says the cab was blue. The witness is 80% reliable.
So the intuitive answer, the System 1 answer, is 80%. You just go with the witness.
Exactly. People almost completely ignore the base rate, the fact that there are hardly any blue cabs to begin with. The actual mathematical probability is only about 41%.
So why do we ignore the hard stats and just trust the witness?
Because a statistical fact like 15% of cabs are blue is abstract, doesn't create a story. But, and this is a crucial insight, if you frame it differently, if you frame it causally.
How so?
If you say, the two companies operate the same number of cabs, but the green cabs are involved in 85% of accidents because their drivers are reckless, people use the base rate information much, much better.
Because now there's a cause. There's a story.
Exactly. Reckless green cab drivers is a story system one can grab onto. A naked statistic is just ignored. A causal fact gets absorbed into the narrative.
It really feels like we're just run by these internal stories. Which brings up the question of who is actually keeping score. This leads to the idea of our two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Right, the experiencing self is the one living in the present. It answers the question, does it hurt right now? The remembering self is the storyteller. It answers, how was it on the whole?
And the remembering self is the one that makes all the decisions about the future.
Because memories are all we get to keep. And that remembering self is a terrible bookkeeper. It follows two very strange rules.
The peak end rule and duration neglect.
Yes. The peak end rule says your entire memory of an event is basically the average of how you felt at the most intense moment and how you felt right at the very end.
And duration neglect means the actual length of the experience. Just doesn't really matter.
It has almost no effect at all, which leads to some truly bizarre decisions. Take the cold hand experiment.
Okay, what was that?
Participants had to put their hand in painfully cold water. In one trial, it was short and ended at peak pain. In another, it was the same painful trial, but with an extra 30 seconds tacked on, where the water was still cold, but slightly less painful.
So the second trial is objectively worse. It's more total pain.
More total pain. But when asked which one they'd rather repeat, most people chose the longer, more painful trial.
Why?
Because it ended on a slightly better note. That improved the memory of the event. The remembering self chose to protect the memory, even at the cost of more suffering for the experiencing self.
That is deeply unsettling. We're prioritizing the story over the actual experience.
We are. And that's why frame effects are so incredibly powerful. Logically equivalent statements can trigger completely different reactions because System 1 doesn't care about logic, it cares about the story's emotional frame.
Like with surgery, saying 90% of patients survive feels completely different from mortality is 10%.
Totally different. Survival is a gain, so you become risk-averse and feel reassured. Mortality is a loss, which makes you fearful and risk-seeking. The facts are identical. The frame is everything.
So after all this, what's the big takeaway for you listening at home? I think it's about understanding these two personalities in your head. System 1 is impulsive and story-driven. System 2 is cautious and analytical, but also lazy.
And you can't be on guard all the time. That would be exhausting. The trick is to learn to recognize the situations where mistakes are most likely. You know, when the stakes are high or you're relying on a quick gut feeling for a big decision. And it's always easier to see these biases in other people.
Let's leave you with one final, powerful idea to think about. The planning fallacy. This is the universal tendency for us to make plans that are unrealistically close to a best-case scenario.
And the only real cure for this is to deliberately seek out the outside view. Instead of getting lost in the details of your own very coherent plan, the inside view, you have to look at the statistics of similar cases.
So if you're planning a project, you need to stop telling yourself the story of why this time it will go perfectly, and instead go look at how long the last 3 similar projects actually took.
Exactly. But it's so hard to do, even for experts.
Why?
Because that cold outside statistic directly conflicts with the beautiful, detailed, optimistic story System 1 has built for you. The challenge for all of us is to get in the habit of looking for that outside view. It is never the natural thing to do, but it's the only way to fight the delusional optimism our minds feed us every single day.